Welcome back to Andertons TV. No prizes for guessing what product we're talking about today. And welcome, Arv.
Hello, hello.
Arv works for HiWatt and is an encyclopedia of all things HiWatt. But welcome. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
It's a long old drive for you, right?
Yeah, a little bit of a drive, yeah.
Now, I guess I feel almost, and I have a feeling a lot of you will be similar to me. I feel like I should know more about HiWatt. I feel like I've known it's been around forever.
Yeah.
And yet, honestly, that's the first time I've ever plugged in to 100-watt HiWatt.
Yeah.
It's completely destroyed all my preconceptions about what it was going to be. It's so clean, so high headroom, so punchy, and then you play, you know, badly as it may be, like a classic David Gilmour riff.
Yeah.
And you go, that's the sound. The glassiness, the cleanliness, the compression that's in there, or that weird sort of compressed but crazy high headroom thing. So look, we're going to get into this. Might be a long video. Panic not, Pete Honore is going to be around playing some amplifiers, but for the time being, let's blow that first, misconception out the way. So okay. I'm sitting here going, HiWatt is a 70s thing, right? But tell us about how it started.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get my facts right, and I'm sure people in the comments will correct me at some point. But basically, the gentleman that created HiWatt was called Dave Reeves, and he was working at Mullard, which is the valve company, and there's a band called the Highlights that needed some amps repairing. This will have been in 63, 64. So take the amp to him and he tinkers around with it, and just, as the legend goes, he says he can do better than that. I can build a better amp than that. So, he begins tinkering with some ideas, and he's building some amps, some Sound City amps for Arbiter, I believe it was, at the time as well. And the design itself is really unique. It's not based upon anything else. And so the original HiWatts really kind of arrived around 65, 66.
So they're not really, you're only really talking 2 or 3 years after Jim launched Marshall, it's like, obviously Vox probably predates that a little bit as well, but it's older than I thought it was. Yeah. So where was Dave, where was he based? Where was he making amps?
Originally he was based in Morden, and then when he got laid off from Mullard, the severance pay he got from that, he then moved down to New Malden and started building out his garage there.
Literally, I mean, again, for people in England, you might have a rough idea where we're talking. We're talking about 20 minutes from Guildford, which is insane. So it's like a suburb of South London. That's crazy. And in the early days, was it literally just him, or did it take off quite quick?
No, it was literally just him to begin with. Then later down the line, he brought on a man called Harry Joyce, who's the other famous name that's associated with HiWatt. And his military background is kind of where the wiring that HiWatt's famous for came into play.
So I say that, I think there's a misconception even about early Marshalls that it's all about distortion.
Yes.
There's the very early Marshalls are clean, you know, unless you crank the bejeebers out.
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
But not like this. Where did the, you know, what was the name of that band you said he built the first
Highlights.
The Highlights. Is that something to do where the name came from?
Well, actually, what happened is he used that band's name as his company name. So all the original Hiwatt amps had serial badges that said Highlight.
Right, okay.
Amplification. Yeah.
And then what, they just said, could you not use our band name? Or?
No, the Highlight badge stuck around for decades and decades, yeah.
Cool. But where was the demand for an amp like this? Because you sort of, if you follow that sort of, you know, all the Marshall early folklore of, you know, it really powering the sound of rock, the British rock scene coming out of that, and, you know, and Clapton getting those amazing blues breaker kind of tones. This seemingly was, obviously Hiwatt and Dave were thinking that's not the direction we want to go, because I would imagine, I can't imagine what you've got to do to this to make it distort. You know, it's just
you just got to crank it. You can push it into saturation, but it's punishingly loud.
Punishing is not even the word. So what kind of players at the time were driving demand for an amp with just that sort of headroom?
I mean, the main names at the time, especially for getting that kind of that saturated sound, was Pete Townsend. You know, arguably one of the greatest live guitar sounds of all time with Live at Leeds. He played mostly an amp that was called the CP103, which is a slightly different design to the Custom 100 as it stands, but he did play 100s, and also John Entwistle played the 100 as well.
Because that is something I think that was probably more common than we think at the time, but nowadays is really quite uncommon.
Yeah.
But you're saying the 50, the 100, and the bigger,
the 200,
yes, are all dual purpose. You can plug a bass in or a guitar.
So they were called AP, which is all purpose. So when you look at the back of them on the serial plates, it's stamped AP.
I mean, there's no way. How was Pete Townsend even? Is that all the drive on those early kind of Who recordings and live stuff? Is it just dying?
I believe for the most part, yeah. There was a period where I know he was slashing his speakers, which kind of emphasised that.
That was that sort of Kinks kind of. I think it was.
Yeah. Dave Davis also played Hiwatt, actually.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I love all those early. You know, you look at all the lineage of early fuzz pedals and how artists managed to get, you know, broken consoles and slashed speakers and everything to get the sound. But so that's strange, isn't it? So I sort of feel like, so you had Townsend doing, you know, a more driven vibe with his Hiwatt amplifiers.
Yep.
I mean, I guess, you know, obviously from that first piece that we put in, I think the guy who's made the Hiwatt sound the most iconic is David Gilmour.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So when did he start using? You know, because Floyd would have been around late 60s.
Yeah,
but
I'm not.
Is it a later
sure.
thing?
I should have done more homework, but I think it was probably been the very late 60s that Gilmour got his first Hiwatts. Certainly by the early 70s, he had multiple DR103 heads in his rig. Yeah.
And the DR103 is the official model number of this custom Hiwatt 100. And you say that these are the David Gilmour settings, right? So we have got the. I'm slightly frightened. We've got the Pete Townsend settings as well. I don't know, maybe do I need an SG or something? I don't know, whatever. But maybe we'll have a go at that. I guess, you know, it's quite a familiar looking layout with the sort of the 4 inputs and the 2 channels. So I guess that to a certain degree, you're sort of HiWatt are taking a sort of a relatively tried and tested route in terms of layout. But you mentioned that Dave, what was the other guy's name? Bill Joyce?
Harry Joyce.
Harry Joyce,
yes.
Sorry. What were the main sort of electronic kind of differences, if you like, and what are they sort of doing in terms of, is it just about the headroom?
I mean, a lot of it is the headroom, but it's, like I mentioned, it's a completely unique design. You see from this amp down here, which is out of its head box, it's got the humongous transformers, which, you know, it's all part of that high headroom thing. Yeah, I don't think really there was another amp at the time that was capable of producing such, you know, high headroom and clarity, really.
And again, we have to remember that as that type of music, you know, became more popular, more people wanted to go see it, venues got bigger, and PAs aren't keeping up. So the next thing you've got guitar players going, yeah, could you go and play in front of 2,000 people? Oh no, actually maybe 6,000, or maybe 20,000 people, whatever. Yeah. And your amp basically has to make it. So you better have 6 of these stacks on stage. I mean, it's like, how any of those guys have got any hearing left is just insane.
I mean, Pete Townsend, you know, famously had 3 full stacks on stage, and that's all you're hearing out front.
It's quite phenomenal to even, I guess, if you're standing far enough away from it, and it's maybe big venue, it's a different vibe, isn't it?
You don't want to be in the front row for that.
No, I bet you don't. Now tell me again, I was the 4 inputs you were saying you got 2 different channels, but also each input is a different attenuated input as well.
And it's like I said earlier, it's counterintuitive almost, is that the high input is the bottom input, and then the top one is your low impedance. So and obviously the other great thing is that you can link the channels and blend both together. Yeah,
which is very cool.
Yeah.
So I think again, Pete will appear at different times in this video to do some playing. So maybe maybe now is a good time to hear Pete play this. During that sort of era, was this basic design all that was in the HiWatt catalogue for a period of time? Or?
It will have been, yes. Yeah.
So we're going through the 70s. What began to appear then slightly sort of later on, and what was sort of driving that?
I think really is as PA systems, you know, improved and people weren't necessarily needing to have the full stacks behind them, there was a demand for low wattage amplifiers. So in the 80s, the Custom 20 arrived, and I believe that was designed originally by Audio Brothers. Mm-hmm. It's a slightly different circuit. It's completely different to the 100 and the 50. It's kind of more chimey. It's almost designed to break up more. Which what I didn't mention earlier is that the 50 and the 100 have the exact same preamp. It's just you know, that's 2 EL34s, that's 4 EL34s, and obviously it's got a different size transformers.
Yeah. I guess that became more common, didn't it? So in the 80s, you were seeing the advent of master volume amplifiers, more preamp gain, less your smaller amplifiers, more channel switching, all that kind of stuff started to come in. So I'm not really familiar with the Custom 20. This is you've just got a very simple. You've got a 3-band EQ master. So you have now got master volume,
and it's also got a gain on as well.
I'm being completely. I've just realised as well, looking at this, there is a master volume on here.
Yeah.
So even back in 65-ish type. Yeah. Interesting. Is that the first then master volume amplifier?
That's a very good question. We'll have to go and look at that in a bit.
So do you know what then? Give me that before we do. I know we're skipping around a little bit here. Given that we've got master volume, so if I crank this but turn that down, can we get into some?
You should be able to start getting to there, yeah.
Well, let's see what happens.
Okay. I'll bring you down to a reasonable level there.
I've got a boost, got a couple of pedals on the floor here. I've got the Volante to do the big, tape echo kind of vibe. I've got a blues breaker, and I've got a new pedal from WEM, which is also owned by the same guy that owns HiWatt, which is called a WEM solid state
It's the CCB1.
There we go.
There you go.
What he said. But just, oh my gosh, just the guitar at the moment. It's very, obviously, as you can hear, it's just, I mean, I bet you if I, let's just pop it on standby a minute.
Sure.
Let's just change guitar. I think this will probably drive a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, it's still what you would class as pretty clean at that. So all the gain that Townsend is getting is power amp distortion. Oh, good Lord. Or however it goes, I forget. Christ, I mean, that's still, it's unpleasantly loud. I'm not even entirely sure at this stage whether it's the kind of breakup that you would necessarily even, I mean, do you want? I guess it's like a rock sound, isn't it? Yeah. I'm literally going, I can feel my hearing shuts down as soon as I play that chord. And then I know that, wow. But it really, I suppose the point is, I'm almost, you know, I've been looking at this amplifier for like the last half an hour or whatever, and only really just realised it had master volume, because I just wasn't expecting it to be there.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Okay, anyway, we'd sort of gone past this era into the era of perhaps some slightly higher gain, lower wattage sort of stuff.
Yep.
Now, I remember in the 80s, it not be, you know, HiWatt going through some financial issues. I don't know if they went bust or changed hands or whatever like that, but I certainly, what is that sort of, so is there a sort of sad story for a little bit?
It basically in the 80s, Dave Reeves sadly passed away. Mm-hmm. And then the whole company kind of fell into turmoil, really, in terms of no one really knew who the company was going to go to. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think it was some of the people that were building at HiWatt at the time carried on building, and that's how Audio Brothers came around, which were the people that owned HiWatt for a period in the 80s. Yeah. Mm.
I think I've said this story before in other Andertons videos, but that's my first, one of my earliest Andertons memories is of. I don't think this is before I worked there, so I'd have just been hanging around as a kid who was just into it. Our manager at the time buying a load of bankrupt HiWatt stock.
Yep.
And I just remember going into Andertons and seeing 20 or 30 or 40 heads in boxes that had been bought, which I'm guessing would have just been a load. I'm pretty sure there was a load of these and a load of these.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I remember, but I just remember them being on special offer for something like £199 for these and £299 for these.
Yep.
And I've got a funny feeling as well, we probably paid like, and it sounds obscene now, but I've got a feeling we paid like 75 quid each for that. You know, it was one of those just like bankrupt stock deals, good little money spinner for Andertons. But then, even then, not selling out that fast. It was almost like this brand and big loud valve amplifiers. It was done. Nobody really wanted it.
Yeah. There was a change in the market then.
Yeah,
really, wasn't
and
there?
You were saying, what do you reckon a second-hand one of these from the 80s is? You know, I'm not even talking vintage now. So if you had one of these from the 80s,
the 80s ones you can pick up around 2,200.
So there you go. You've had it. We should have kept them. We made a fortune. So. Yeah, which is nuts, and then again, and if anybody who was working at Andertons or was involved with Iron Maiden at the time, I'm absolutely certain that the story goes that eventually after 3 or 4 months of trying to sell these and nobody wanting to buy them, we did a deal with Iron Maiden who bought them all, and I'm 99.9% certain there was something they just wanted them for the cosmetic. And they basically gutted the amplifiers, put something else in them, but that was their touring backline, just looked like a load of HiWatt. I don't think we had any cabs. That was the weird thing. I think we just had heads.
Yeah.
But look, so who knows how that story went? But isn't it funny how just fashions change and things come back round, and now these are seen as some of the most sought after amplifiers in the world. Okay, so we've moved on a little bit. I'm guessing post the Dave Reeves and Harry Joyce kind of era, has there been another like really famous designer since then, or does it always feel like you're harking back to kind of designs that they did?
The designs have always there'll have been modifications as the era's changed, and sometimes designs may have got lost, and things will have been tinkered with, and there'll be replications. Currently, we're building our custom 100 and the 50s to the 1969 design.
Right.
When we became HiWatt in 2016, we thought it was really important to make sure that what we were building were the best replications possible of the original Dave Reeves amps. And I think we're doing a decent job of that right now. In fact, it could be a good time to show this.
Yeah, let's do that. It's you're going to. It kind of feels like there's a lot of space but not a lot of stuff to go inside. But I don't think that, that is what anything of that era looks like. Old Marshalls, old Fenders, there's old pedals, they're usually massive enclosures for not much stuff.
That's it. But HiWatts have always been, really renowned for the build standards, and it's something that we've really wanted to try and continue. Since we've been building these custom shop amps up in Doncaster.
This is a great example, actually, if you just keep that on camera.
Sure.
So what you can see there, in fact maybe Arv, you pointed it, the brown kind of rectangular bits of board that the components are mounted on, that's called turret board. Before the concept of using turret board existed in amplifiers, and you still do get one or two brands that elect to not use it now, you literally would have had just spaghetti and components rattling around inside. And some people might even say that's still how you should refer to point-to-point wiring. The turret board there is essentially, when you buy the board, there's nothing on it. It's just sort of heat-resistant plastic.
We buy this in big sheets, chop it down to size, drill out the holes, and then we hand hammer all these turrets in ourselves. So
it's really still it's very, very much about a hand-wired product. But what is nice about that is you can follow the layout quite clearly.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can see where the influence of a military designer has come in and gone. Everything's got to, because I think when you're putting together circuits like that, although the order in which the components work is ultimately what dictates, and the values of those components is what dictates how it works. The proximity to each other has a big bearing on background noise and other kind of weird performance issues. So I think it's really important to use like a layout that that's how I want the amp to work. So that's turret board, and then tag board is kind of similar, but the turrets themselves are kind of already pre-mounted, aren't they? Of course, 90% of modern amplifiers now would use a printed circuit board, which is where all of the joins from one component to the next are built into the board, aren't they? So it's a super fast way of mass producing guitar amps. So even something like that, though, I reckon you're talking 10 hours plus probably to just wire one of those up.
It's very labour intensive, and it's roughly between 10 to 12 hours to build a single amplifier, start to finish.
So hugely labour intensive, and obviously a big part of why hand-wired amplifiers are expensive relative to doing it PCB wise. Lovely to see inside one though. I think engineers and repair guys are probably looking at this going, that's my little wet dream of an amplifier to repair, because it's just so easy to see what you need to replace and hook out. You can see Arv doesn't go to the gym, he just lifts amplifiers up like this every day. Because those transformers are
they're humongous. I'll try and pick it up
they?
That way for you.
And I guess that's the other, super important part of amp design, and if you really want headroom and power and all that kind of stuff, it's like good quality big transformers.
That's it. Unfortunately we can't get partridge transformers anymore, which is the famous transformer that was built into Hiwatts. So we have these made specifically for us to the partridge spec by a company that's pretty local to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the production has moved up to Doncaster.
Yeah, we're
now,
based up in Doncaster,
which is probably a good segue. I assume that happened during the Music Ground.
That's
era,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Music Ground were the next owner, were they, after Audio Brothers?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah, post Audio Brothers. Yeah.
And I suppose 75% of people watching this video, that'll mean nothing to them. There'll be a small number of you that will go, oh yes, the Music Ground days. Yes, those were the guys that were in the headlines once or twice for what they got up to. And I think there was a period of time where you saw amps branded as HiWatt and amps branded as MaxWatt, and all sorts of arguments over who owned what and could use what rights, as well as other things. And I think it's probably fair to say there would be some people that might have been put off of owning a HiWatt during that time because of the ownership thing. So it's probably quite nice to just clear that up now, isn't it? So who owns it now, and who do you work for, and all that kind of stuff?
So like I mentioned, we got the company in 2016. It was bought by a Canadian man called Alex Bach. At the time, he had a business partner called Darren, and the two of them got in touch with the Music Ground guys and acquired the trademark for HiWatt in the UK and Europe. Sometime in I'll probably get the dates wrong, but sometime in the 90s, I want to say, the trademarks were split. So there's a trademark for HiWatt in UK and Europe, and then there was a trademark for North America and Japan. So when we first got the company, I joined about 6 months into Alex owning it. We were only selling HiWatt into UK and Europe, and then in 2019 we were lucky enough to bring both trademarks back together for the first time in nearly 4 decades. It's a funny story really. So Darren, who was Alex's business partner, is probably the biggest HiWatt aficionado on the planet. And he had previously had dealings with Music Ground through one of the bands he was playing in. So he kind of got the idea together to buy HiWatt, and Alex has no background in the industry whatsoever, but one of his companies that he does own in Toronto is a bespoke furniture company. So the idea was that Darren would be the managing director and Alex would build all the woodwork in Toronto, ship it across over here for us to build, and that would be our custom shop. So that's kind of how Alex kind of got involved with the company. Sadly, a few years down the line, Darren got cancer once more and had to leave HiWatt. He's fine now, he's back in remission and he's doing his own things, which is wonderful. But then that made Alex come to the forefront, and he's like, what the hell am I doing with this company that I know nothing about? And like, all credit to the man. Over the past few years, he has done all of his homework. He could build an amp from start to finish. He understands why this resistor's there, why we're wiring. Why some transformers are wired specifically like this to get the HiWatt sound. It's really incredible the knowledge that he's acquired in such a short space of time.
I met Alex for the first time in January this year at AMP, and he 100% comes across as a mad scientist who's been making amps all his life. There's like this. It's weird that you would go, he's picked up all that knowledge in the last 7 or 8 years. That's
it's really phenomenal. Yeah. And so. Yeah, he like I say, he's based over in Toronto. I look after the day-to-day runnings over here. I'm not allowed a title because it might mean he'll have to pay me a bit more. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now. We have a very small team up in Doncaster, and a small team over in Toronto where we'll ship gear out over there. We'll have the overseas gear shipped into that warehouse, and they'll distribute into North America.
So I want to sort of do a slight shoehorn back into the timeline, because we'll try and, loosely speaking, bring people up to date with the products that are in the current range. We can talk about the Asian made product that you've got, but I suppose particularly now in the UK as well, with the news of Oasis reforming, it feels to me like did it really go kind of like Townsend, David Gilmour? You mentioned some other bands, weren't you, that were
Oh yeah.
I suppose, like you say, Maiden for a while.
Yeah, well, one of the other original HiWatt users was Jimmy Page, and he had an amp that was called the Sap
He used a bit of everything, didn't he?
He used a bit of everything, yeah. But there's their Royal Albert Hall show, which is famous again for its HiWatt usage. But they were, amongst others, there's so many people playing HiWatt back then.
Yeah.
And I guess, like we mentioned, how the trending guitar amps changed a lot in the 80s and early 90s, and then people started moving to solid state.
Yeah.
There was no need for gear like this, and so in the 90s. Some of the bands that were playing it then, where they're picking them up secondhand cheap.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're buying them then because they're super desirable.
Yeah.
And you're so right. I mean, all my early memories of Andertons was of a pile of secondhand old valve amplifiers that you couldn't give away.
Yeah.
Fender Twins and Marshall 100-watt super leads and
yeah.
And it's like. So of course all the up and coming bands, all the skint up and coming bands now would just be buying those.
Especially in the States as well. Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. Obviously famously has his Marshall full stacks, but on his left hand side one has a custom 100. Chris Novoselic from Nirvana picked up a DR103 in Neutro.
Wow.
And then proceeded to tour with that for the final few tours. He actually bought a custom 200 from us not too long ago as well. But yeah, and I guess there was a big resurgence in valve amplifiers in the early 2000s, and that's kind of where bands like the Hives and the Killers and then Noel Gallagher picked up his HiWatts.
Oh, so is the earlier Oasis stuff then not HiWatt? I sort of seem to think I seem to feel like HiWatt's really synonymous with Noel's sound, but was that a slightly later?
Yeah, so. I think Noel got his first HiWatts around 2007.
Oh,
I
wow.
want to say.
Quite late.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then he has the famous custom 100 2x12 vertical combos, which are, I mean, a custom 50 2x12 combo is bad enough to pick up. So
I have to say as well. So for those of you who don't know, our video studio is actually on the first floor of a house, which if you're in America, that's your second floor, all right? So we have some stairs to come up. I picked this cab up, forget everything else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way that this box has just got a cabinet. This has been mislabeled. It must have some 100-watt combo in here.
That's the 18mm
It's just a cab.
Yeah.
It's so heavy. I think I might have even done you a disservice in previous videos then. This super thick looking cabinet, most other brands achieve that by putting a lip on the front, don't they? So the cabinet itself is just a normal, 7-8mm thick, maybe a bit more than that, 10mm thick birch ply. And then they put a big lip on the front to make it look chunky. You're saying your cabinets are literally...
it's 18mm, yeah. Again, it's we've got to pay homage to the origins of HiWatt.
It's so heavy. So which ones did Noel actually use then? Or have we got anything here that's Noel-esque?
Yes. So like I say, he had the custom 100 vertical 2x12 combos, which are about yay high and way more than my car. And then for a while he played this is called the 2040. For a while previously it was called the Studio Stage. We still refer to it as the Studio Stage, and he was playing some of those for a bit, but now currently with High Flying Birds he's playing the Custom 50 as a 2x12 combo.
An original type of HiWatt design.
So he, let me think back, this will be around 2017 or 18, he bought 3 of those combos from us. Yeah.
I would imagine you are very excited about the uplift in sales to HiWatt should he choose to be rocking these at Wembley. I imagine your phone will be red hot as well of people going, give me tickets off. That's exciting. And is there anyone else I mean, you mentioned things like the Hives and the Killers. We've got a great lineage of some great rock bands.
We've got some incredible bands that play HiWatt, past and present. I mean, one of the biggest bands that we work with currently is Idols, and those guys have HiWatt all across the stage. We've been working with those guys for a long time now, since their first album came out, really. And originally they were playing a custom 50 combo, Bowen was. And now they've got all these full stacks and stuff on stage because they're playing, huge venues all over the world.
Why not? let's just quickly, just in no particular timeline then. So tell me, so 2040 is, we've got reverb built in.
Yep. That's got a dedicated gain on it as well with a push-pull, and it's also foot switchable.
Right, so this is a slightly more contemporary. And you said this was an 80s design,
that
or
one
more
came
than
around
90s?
in the mid to late 90s, I would say.
Okay. And the 2040 is presumably a reference to its volume output,
Yes,
is
yeah,
it? So
you
you can
can
switch
switch
that.
it.
Okay. Custom super high 50?
Yes,
What's
that's our metal amp.
Oh no!
Yeah, we did
So
it.
into the realms. Well, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
so that's a super high gain.
So essentially, that is a custom 50.
Yeah.
We sent it off to our friend Mike Fortin from Fortin Amplification,
wow.
and he turned it into a metal beast. It's kind of funny though, because whilst it is all metal, it's also really incredible at low gain settings. So Brian Fallon from the Gaslight Anthem also has one of those.
We'll come back to the cabs in a minute, because I know it's all Fane stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, in all of our custom shop stuff, it's Fane.
So again, that's another little story. So what have you got? The custom 20 over there is what?
So yeah, that's a slightly different design that came around in the 80s. They've kind of been updated the way we're building them now. So the 20 and the 2040 have the same preamp now. They just do slightly different things. I mean, it's got the reverb. We've installed like a little bright switch as well, and this has now got a
You're
push-pull
saying
gain.
essentially that's that preamp.
No.
No? Okay.
This is its own preamp, this one.
Right, okay, fine.
It's kind of more chimey, and it's designed to break up. The
Okay.
idea is it should break up.
the bottom one there?
Yeah, this is our new little toy. This is the DR20/0.5. This is basically a miniature DR103. It's got the exact same preamp, but it runs on EL84s rather than 34s.
So that's probably definitely worth a little play. So if you're a Pete Townsend, David Gilmour fan who isn't playing in front of 100,000 people,
yes, yeah.
that might be more appropriate.
Yeah.
And then what are the combos sort of loaded up with?
Yeah, there'll be combo versions of this.
That is it. Okay, and a combo, and the other one is
it's custom 2112.
Right. Okay. Fine. This isn't everything, by the way. If you dive on over to the Andertons website or the HiWatt website, you can see. But so this is the UK custom shop stuff.
Yes.
And then before we talk about the Fane thing, there's an Asian-made series of the T series.
That's
isn't
right.
It? Is there any one of these that it's sort of
it's
loosely
kind of
based around?
Loosely based on somewhere between the 2040 and like the 50 and 100. We often get comments about why are we doing that? It's not HiWatt, but it's part of being. You've got to be part of the market, and it would be remiss of us to not make amps that people can afford to get the HiWatt sound.
Yeah, and so that video Pete and I have already done.
Yes.
So that's probably the range I'm most familiar with, and it did feel like that was a sort of a jack of all trades, could do a bit of everything.
Yes.
It doesn't do that high headroom clean thing to the same degree, but they are surprisingly affordable. And I think for me as well, a massive draw of HiWatt. It just looks so cool.
Yeah, it's such a classic design.
But the T series is worth a look. That was really good value for an all valve amplifier. But then even more amazing value is you go into the Leeds stuff, which is the all solid state.
Yeah, that's our new line of solid state amps.
And we've had a bit of a dabble. We've used a couple of those amplifiers in shootout videos, but we're yet to do the full range review. Yeah. But that's really drawing on some of those high headroom heritage, isn't it? So tell us about that Leeds range.
We have been working on that for a long time. Anyone that's kind of paid attention to HiWatt over the past decade or so will have seen that there's always been a lower end solid state range, but the goal for us is to be able to provide a HiWatt at all all price ranges, and so the Leeds range, we've really spent a lot of time ensuring that it's got the HiWatt character. It'll never be one of these, but I think for the money we're able to offer it at, I think it gets pretty darn close.
I'm a big fan of solid state amplifiers that use a more traditional solid state power section. As much as I think it's incredible what you've been able to do with modern technology to have apps and Bluetooth and a million features and Class D power sections which are super light and all that kind of stuff. For me, the closest solid state amplifier to the amps I love is just to stay old school, regular, I don't know if it's a MOSFET power section, but like a solid state power section, analog preamp. You sacrifice some flexibility and sophistication, but you get a proper
That's it. I mean,
sound.
we're unashamedly old school in our approach to stuff. There was no point in us trying to go down that route of digital and modeling and everyone else's beats to the punch. Let's focus on what we do really well, which is make great, clean sounding amps.
So I guess maybe you've answered the question there before we even answered it, but so why have 150 and a 300 watt Leeds amplifier? Is it all just about headroom?
Yeah, it's just fun, isn't it?
I guess, interestingly, I do think, and most people will probably have some experience of this, even just with a hi-fi or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're using valve, it's no problem to do that the amp just goes, I love it. It's a sound. Yes, it'll break up, but it'll break up really nicely, and it's a sound. If you've got solid state, I do sort of feel most solid state amplifiers begin to sound more unpleasant in the way they break up.
Yeah.
If you turn it all the way up. Like if you've got a little radio at home, if you turn the volume all the way up, it doesn't sound great, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's the idea, isn't it? Is that really the idea of a 300 watt amplifier is to give you more volume than you'd ever need with the volume on half.
Yeah, exactly.
So you still retain that clarity and that loveliness. I mean, I'm excited about doing that. Oz, our guy that does some of the editing for us, he's a big Hiwatt fan and he loves that high headroom, and his vibe is more of a doom, kind of big riffy doom thing.
Yeah.
You do see some of those higher, wattage amplifiers in that genre. Are there any big doomy kind of bands?
We do very well in that. I mean, the great thing about Hiwatt is it's basically like a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want with it. So we've got bands of all genres playing it. We work closely with a lot of the bands that play, festivals like Desert Fest, but in particular, we have a band called High on Fire that play. Hiwatt Jeff Matz, their bass player, plays DR201s. One of the other great bands, it was kind of more proggy, but kind of runs into the stonery doom side of things, is a band called Elder. And their guitarist Nick DeSalvo has always played custom 100s, but started recently playing one of these as well.
Well, I think we were going to talk about Fane, weren't we?
We were.
Just my last. Yeah. So what I've heard of Fane, and I guess I've always associated Fane with Hiwatt, but I don't know anything about the background.
Yeah.
Or is that? Do you own the Fane brand as well?
No, we don't own Fane. No, but Fane are actually only based about 35 minutes drive from us. They're just outside of Leeds.
And they're still going as a. They're making more than just guitar amp speakers, or what?
Primarily the guitar speakers. I think they do a lot of PA stuff as well.
Right. And were they around back in the 60s when Hiwatt first started, or?
Yeah, I think Fane was introduced to Hiwatt pretty early on. Yeah, I mean that was always the pairing. In Gilmour's cabs it was Fane, and then he had the crescendos as well, which was Fane as well. But
and is that just, again, is it, I know literally nothing about Fane. Is it all about having a speaker that can cope with the sort of the clarity and the volume that they're trying to produce?
So we have a speaker called the Purpleback, the custom Purpleback, and that is to...
Well, by the way, Pete, it actually is a Purpleback. You can see it in the back of the combo. You will love this.
And that's to kind of replicate the original speakers from way back when, and that's a 150 watt speaker. We have really high wattage speakers just so they can handle what we're doing, basically. Well, look, I mean, it is lovely to meet you, and it makes me ever so proud, actually, just as a sort of as someone, a proud Englishman or a Britishman, because it's like, what other country did Vox and Marshall and Orange and Hiwatt and Laney and continues to produce great guitar amplifiers to this day? Sorry if I've missed anyone out there who was around in the sort of 60s and the 70s, but I suppose Sound City and all those kind of brands. Was Selmer an American brand, or was that a British brand? I don't know. You see those around from years ago, but yeah, it's like it is amazing and so good to know that so many of these brands are still in the hands of super amp enthusiasts that just want to take it to another level. But Arv, it's been a pleasure having you down. Thank you very much for having me.
If you want to find out some more about Hiwatt stuff, you can whiz on over to the Andertons website or the Hiwatt website, or come and have a play on some. Like I say, I think there's even smaller stuff than Leeds coming, isn't there? So you're literally like my first guitar amplifier stuff from Hiwatt. But yeah, if you want to come and try one, check out the Andertons website, see what we've got, and take a trip to Guildford. Anyway, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed Pete's little playing inserts as well. I'm now going to go and lay down in a dark room and let my hearing recover. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Cheers.